I'm Samantha Bee. Welcome to our special Full Frontal Wants to Take Your Guns, the show where we try to rip that rifle from Charlton Heston's cold, dead hands. Even in death, he is really strong. Gun violence in America is an epidemic. We're in the midst of the largest wave of mass firearm violence in modern history, including at least 10 mass shootings across the U.S. this past weekend alone. And it is devastating lives in all too familiar ways.
Here we go again.
More than 400 people have been shot or killed by gunfire in the last 72 hours.
At least 8 people were shot and killed at a FedEx warehouse.
This time it's Boulder, Colorado, where gunfire at a supermarket yesterday broke out, killed at least 10 people.
The killing spree, in which most of the victims were Asian American women, happened in the span of just a few hours.
5 people killed and another hurt in a mass shooting in Rock Hill.
The wave of mass shootings this year may seem like a result of America's reopening, but gun violence never went away during the pandemic. 2020 actually saw the highest one-year increase in homicides since we began keeping records. Hence the Republicans' proposed solution, the maybe we should stop keeping records act. But despite all of this, Americans love their guns.
While America makes up about 4% of the world's population, we have more than 40% of the world's guns.
The Small Arms Survey estimates there are 393 million guns owned in the U.S., more guns than people.
Oh my God, that is so many guns. Can't we at least agree to spay and neuter them so guns stop breeding? Now, I know what the right-wingers out there are saying. Thanks. Guns don't kill people. People do. So we need to ban people to finally make America safe for guns. And how do we get rid of people? With guns, which don't kill people. Now stay tuned for Gutfeld or I'll shoot you. I hate your show. America leads other developed countries by a ridiculous margin in both gun ownership and gun murders. A country like Japan doesn't have our out-of-control gun violence problem because they don't let everybody have guns. Just like we don't have Japan's robot boob missile violence problem because we don't let our robots have boob missiles. At least not yet. Mississippi is considering it. Our country is trapped in a brutal cycle. Whenever there's a mass shooting, 3 things happen. The two sides debate gun control, there's a surge in gun sales, and I cry on the couch in my pajamas with Younger on repeat. I like to see that I'm not the only Gen Xer who can easily pass for a millennial. After the near back-to-back mass shootings in Atlanta and Colorado, President Biden finally decided to get in the game.
The White House is announcing 6 executive actions on guns. They direct the Justice Department to restrict homemade weapons known as ghost guns, restrict stabilizing braces that turn pistols into rifles, resume firearms tracking that stopped more than 20 years ago, and draft state red flag laws allowing relatives and police to ask a judge to keep weapons from people in crisis.
They've offered plenty of thoughts and prayers, members of Congress. Enough prayers. Time for some action.
Enough prayers, time for some action is also what God says every night when he's done answering prayers and ready to get freaky with Mrs. God. Biden's steps are a good start, but we need laws, which are practically impossible to pass at the federal level, but they can work. Since the Brady Bill passed in 1993, more than 300 million background checks have taken place, and approximately 4 million sales to prohibited buyers have been stopped. But the bill still has loopholes, like exemptions for purchases made through gun shows, private sales, and the internet. No one should be in such a hurry that they can't wait a day to send their shootable arrangement Mother's Day bouquet. Where the federal government has been reluctant to act, many states have stepped up. They've passed measures like background checks, expanded age restrictions, and they've ensured that guns stay out of the hands of high-risk individuals. Although, due to a typo, Rhode Island passed background checks for all gun purchases. It wasn't really necessary, but bubble injuries have dropped 46%. States with stricter gun control laws have lower rates of both murders and suicides, and states with fewer guns have fewer gun deaths. But gun violence still kills nearly 40,000 people each year, comparable to breast cancer, liver disease, and pancreatic cancer. It's time that we treat it as a public health crisis. That means studying it so we can understand the many root causes, because not all shootings have the same origin story. Kind of like comic book characters have a diverse range of origin stories, from losing a loved one in an act of gun violence to losing 2 loved ones in an act of gun violence to losing many loved ones in an act of gun violence. We have many distinct gun violence problems, and we have to stop clumping them all together under one label, like that random aisle at the store that's labeled stationary, but also includes cat litter and lice combs. We should have been looking at guns as a public health problem all along, but we haven't been able to, largely because of 1996's Dickey Amendment. Presumably angry about the lifelong taunting he'd received about his name, Congressman Jay Dickey punished America by barring the CDC from spending money to advocate or promote gun control. That basically scared the government off funding any research into gun violence, and you can't solve a problem if you don't have data on it. I mean, Jay-Z still has the same 99 problems he had in 2003 because the only data he's gathered is that a bitch is not one of them. Thankfully, in 2019, Congress finally started funding gun violence research again, but there is a lot of catching up to do. The government has been unable to fund any substantial research since 1996, and even back then, they couldn't get much done because every time their mom used the phone, they get kicked off the internet. Only 90s kids will understand. Even with the new funding, the CDC and NIH will split only $25 million to study one of our nation's leading causes of premature death. That's less than the budget for Paul Blart Mall Cop, which barely even cracked the top 50 causes of premature death. Audiences died laughing. While $25 million isn't nearly enough, at least we can finally start funding studies on gun violence and coming up with solutions. There's not a single quick fix solution, but previous studies have directed us toward gun control laws that work, like universal background checks. And in this age of Zoom meetings, I check my background before every meeting to make sure that one of my Stratocasters is in view. My Christmas bonus every year is me playing Tears in Heaven. Look, our instincts to call for gun control and taking away everyone's guns can be counterproductive, I suppose, scaring off gun owners, leading to more gun sales, and hurting our efforts to reduce violence. So, in hindsight, probably should have called this special. Full Frontal wants a robust, government-funded assessment of the gun violence problem with the goal of achieving greater gun safety and reducing violence. But a long title like that would look awkward in your on-screen program guide. Believe it or not, we actually have a model for using a public health approach to solve a lethal problem of this magnitude, the car safety movement. For the first few decades of the auto age, driving fatalities were seen as inevitable. But since 1975, the rate of deaths from motor vehicle crashes has fallen by 45%. That didn't just happen. We made it happen through measures like federal safety standards and decades of really weird messaging about seatbelts.
The seatbelt. It's beautiful. It's now being pressed into service everywhere to keep things where you want them to be.
The lovely Mrs. Gordon isn't so lovely anymore. She had what she thought was a good excuse for not wearing safety belts.
Hi, I'm Joey Lawrence. If you need a break, give a kid a break. Buckle up.
We are the dummies crashing on through, busting our heads just for you.
Good night from Iron Maiden. Drive home safe. Remember to strap yourselves in with your safety belts.
An accident! An accident! An accident! The humans had an accident.
Oddly enough, they also made a butthole edition of that announcement, and that was before CGI. Our country saw a public health crisis in driving fatalities, and we didn't just give up because it was too hard to address. We decided it was important. So we got our best scientists, engineers, and skimbleshanks to work together to improve things. But what if we never demanded it? What would cars be like if they were as free from regulation as guns are? We decided to find out. Donuts, cars, coffee, Funyuns, Four Loko, guns, Plan B, Viagra, neck braces, cigarettes, those round cheeses, and all of this stuff. So one of these things is not like the other. No, not because my dad owns all of them except Plan B. It's because they're all strictly federally regulated, except for guns. So I decided to buy a super safe minivan, hire a mechanic. Well, I know a guy who knows a guy. And we're going to see exactly what a car would look like if it was only regulated to the same minimal standards as a gun. Let's start with the very basics. Seatbelts. Bye. See ya. Federal law requires all cars have seatbelts because, duh, they save lives. There's no federal requirement for the closest equivalent to a seatbelt, a gun safety. You know, the doohickey that keeps the gun from firing when you don't want it to. Oh, God. For over 50 years, we have had federal safety standards for motor vehicles, and there are now over 70 regulations specifying design, construction, performance, and durability standards for automobiles in the United States.
Saves lives.
How many of these types of regulations for the killing machine? Basically, none. Not even child locks. Kid, please don't touch that. We have federally regulated cars and successfully reduced the rate of deaths over time. Meanwhile, gun fatalities are on the rise, and we continue to do almost nothing. And to prove our point, we're also doing away with those state inspections where they check your brakes, headlights, turn signals, steering, tires, wheels, mirrors, windshields, car slinkies, and horn. Wow, now that's shrill. Because we all know gun annual inspections don't exist. There's more, but unlike a homicidal bigot trying to buy a gun, it'll have to wait. Aw, thanks for watching. If you'd like to hear more from Full Frontal, hit subscribe and visit our page for more videos. Or if you'd like to be radicalized, leave YouTube on autoplay.